Okay, so let's see. First things first, I guess I'll talk about grades. So just up front, I've been uh, not doing really well, as in I've been really overwhelmed. So I don't have the most up to date. I don't have the lab 2 grades in. So again, if you guys want more particular commentary, you should email me. If I haven't gone back to you, if that has happened, let me know. There was a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend in particular, and last week in general, and so I got a lot of emails yesterday, not just from students, and I haven't done a very good job keeping up with them. Not really an excuse, but it just is what it is. So, but just keep pestering me. I'm your TA, so I will get back to you, and I will make sure that you guys have everything that you need within reason to do well. And whenever I make a mistake, like for example, from late with grids, which seems to be a common thing, then I find other ways to make it up to you. For example, I like this session as having the Q&A thing before, so you guys will have extra time basically just to make sure you have good grades before you submit them. But yeah, you have to email me if there's some problem, and we'll get it worked out. I have other comments too, but they're about this lab and not stuff in general. So with that being said, before 9:30, and while I start taking attendance, I'm going to open up the session for a Q&A. If you guys have questions about the homework, if you have questions about the lab report too, that's fine. We can talk about them, like the last lab report. So it's up to you guys, really. I'm just trying to think about what to do. If you guys would prefer to also have this mandatory session for Q&A for the lab reports, I don't want to have to make it more mandatory than it already is. So I'm thinking for lab report questions, we can go over some kind of general things. If for more in-depth questions, like if you guys want to go over something, like review something, or if you want to show you how to do it, I say let's save that for after the pre-lab lecture. And then the students who don't necessarily want to be there, they don't have to be there for that. Okay, so with that being said, do you guys have any kind of urgent questions about the class overall, about the homework, about the lab?
Yeah, I got a question about the homework.
Yeah.
So there was just a few things that kept on popping up. So the answer key for homework for lab 4, it was saying that the unit's acceptable for question 1 is atomic mass unit.
Oh, did you put gram/mole? Because that's what I did, and I got it wrong. And I emailed Dylan about it. Yeah, and I put the units to like the thousands place because that's how it was in my periodic table when I made the calculations, and it marked me off.
Yeah, I put in grams per mole too, and I didn't know it was AMU.
Yeah, isn't it the same though?
It is the same. How about this, or roughly? How about this? Let's on the Discord, just so I can have it as like a list, like a bulletin list. Let's make a sub channel for homework corrections, because I know I have individual emails, and I'm worried that there are things like this that I haven't gotten to. So
okay,
that way we can all see what the common things are. You guys can add them at will if you have like this question about the homework. They're usually stupid things like units, and that should never go against you. Well, not never, but I mean, for things like that, that obviously is not against you, right? You guys are doing it right. So let's make that. Okay, thanks, Anna. I was pulling that up
right now.
Cool.
Oh, and I have another question about the pre-lab homework that we had, specifically for like question 2. When we're rounding it, when we're simplifying it down, the empirical formula, specifically like C6H10O6 Cl2, and like if we were to simplify it by like dividing all of them by 2, does it have to be Cl1, or can it just be remained at Cl?
It can just be
Cl.
I
had the same issue too.
That's a stupid thing from the homework that needs to be corrected too.
Yeah,
I've never seen that notation anywhere. I think that's just, I don't know I don't know where that came from, but yeah, normally you would actually just reduce it down to that, and the 1 is redundant. It doesn't make sense to have it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
In my other issue is the order of nomenclature, is that really important? Because I put like on number 3, I put CL4SN as opposed to SNCl4. Technically it's not wrong, but I guess there's a rule where metals have to go first.
There is. For that one in particular, I would say yes. I mean, I'm not familiar with every single compound that's ever existed, and so I'm kind of just thinking over my head, but that certainly is a thing. When you have a ionic or just any compound that has a metal, you usually put the metals first. I'm in the organic chemistry division, so I usually think about it in terms of organic compounds, and also the notation there does matter. Like for example, when you have an acid, like let's say you guys have the carbohydrate that you mentioned before, the C6H12O6. In that case, like you'd always have the carbon first, hydrogen second, oxygen last. And if you want to indicate that it's a alcohol, you can put the hydrogen in front. So for example, you could have HC6, H11O6, or sometimes people have C6H11O5OH, things like that. Again, I don't usually work with metal salts, but yeah, that does actually matter for metals to have the metal first. But you were talking about sulfur and nitrogen, correct?
No, this one is chlorine and tin.
Yeah, it does matter, unfortunately. And sometimes when you write out the names too, like I don't know if you guys have gone over this. It seems like for whatever reason 131 goes over this. I don't know if your guys' class though, because I haven't taken this class at this report. I mean in this university, but also for some metal compounds, like let's say copper, the prefix when you're writing it out, not the prefix, but so there's a difference between, for example, cupric and cuprous, and ferrous and ferric. They sound similar, but they actually denote different oxidation states. So I don't know if that's going to come up later, but also keep that in mind.
But in this context where it's asking for empirical formula based on the like percentage of mass, like does it really matter where the order of the nomenclature?
What question is this in particular?
Question 3.
Okay, give me a second. Let's see. Question 3, lab 4. Yeah, that's a good question, but it should still matter because it's still, even though it's an empirical formula, so it's not the exact same thing as the actual chemical substance, it still is. It's like a variation of it, and it does matter. It's a notation thing, and it's kind of stupid because it's like one of those things where it's a convention. So by convention, you always have it this way, but also we had to teach you guys the convention, and shouldn't matter in terms of your notation. I mean, obviously, I get that you guys understand it. I would say my own personal take on this is, did it did it take the entire thing off? Like you get 0 points for that?
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'd probably take off some points, but not the whole thing, as like a compromise, because obviously you understand it, but there's still a convention that needs to be taught, and so that's how I would rationalize that.
Yeah, I mean that was the other point I was gonna make. Like it's like these questions, for example, are worth 4 points each. It just doesn't seem right that I would get the whole 4 points taken off just because my nomenclature order was wrong.
Yeah, no, that's not fair. I completely agree with you on that. That's why. So just if you guys put that on Discord, then it'll be much easier for me to keep track of it, and I can fix that.
Should we put it under homework help, or which section?
I just added homework corrections.
Yeah, there we go.
Channel.
Yeah, that
So-
to keep it separate. It's just for organization, and then you guys can see it, and you can add extra sections if you need it. Like if there's something you guys don't bring up here and now, you can add them later on, and I'll look over them. And the cool thing too is I don't know if I can remove them, but I can at least comment that they've been addressed on there, and so you guys can see if it has been addressed or not. I just like the Discord because then you guys have you all have access to it. So as opposed to private emails where I have to send out group emails and possibly annoy you and overwhelm you. Then this is it's just much better, I think. So that'll be really helpful for me in particular. Let's see. All right. Any other questions before I start talking? And again, just keep in mind, like you guys have the whole 3 hours and then like the entire week, you can keep asking questions. I'm just trying to be, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
For the like the automatic homework that gets graded right after we do it, is that supposed to go into gradebook right after? Because I have nothing in it right now.
You should also post on the homework help. I'm sure there's something I can do to make that happen. So I'll look into it. I'm pretty sure actually we're looking to this, and I thought on some of them I had manually corrected that. I guess if that hasn't been the case, then it hasn't been the case. So yeah, I can correct that. I know how to do that actually.
Yeah, so the labs, do they show up in, like, I don't know what my grades are for my labs because it's not showing up in the gradebook classic either.
Yeah, no, I just have them on a spreadsheet right now. I haven't uploaded them. So I have the spreadsheets and density. I don't have lab report too. So that's why if you email me specifically, then I can preference you guys first just so you can get your grades. I imagine everyone wants to get their grades sooner than later. It's my fault, it's my problem. Once I should just, I think last week I uploaded something, but whatever. I'm pretty sure I can upload. I still need to do it. I think well, whatever. I'll figure it out to upload them to gradebook. Worst case scenario though, I can just email you guys your grades specifically. Just go like student by student and just email you with my grade sheet what you have. I want to find. Yeah, I think, like I said before, I think I said this last week. It's difficult to kind of, in the grade book, it's pretty easy to put the grade in. But the feedback, especially in the way I'm keeping notes in terms of the feedback for each of the reports, I still have them in like a notation. I have them as like, let's say, question 2, then I've got a list of potential errors, and then I pick like, so 2B, for example, this is your error. It probably makes more sense, again, if you guys want feedback, just to email me about that, and I will need to get back to you and be persistent. It's okay, we'll get back to you. All right, anything else?
I also had one more question about, because since we have to go based off our lab manual now that like there's none of the labs in the resources, I tried to print out the L04, but when you do it in the lab manual, like there's a big like stamp on it that filters out.
Oh, I see.
Like it says do not copy.
Yeah, I think someone mentioned that last week.
You can just write over it. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
If you use a pen, it's like no problem. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's fine with me too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay. I'm still taking some attendance, so give me a minute. That's why I'm a little bit distracted, but I'm gonna go on. And again, after this, so like I got a question, for example, about the summary tables. I'll probably go over more in-depth questions about the lab report after this. Just want you guys to have the information. Okay, now that being said, so for this current lab, for the chemical formulas lab, it's I actually filmed it this time. So it seemed a lot easier in my head than it did in practice. And most of the time I was speaking through the fume hood. So I hope the video is audible to you guys. I went through it and it seemed to me to be that way. But let me know if there's an issue because I can correct it. So on that, I actually didn't do the editing and the formatting. And I was asked to do this really last minute. It took a really long time to upload all the videos to someone who's doing the editing. And it seems like he doesn't have the video, at least not to my knowledge. Which means you guys will have to be on standby until that comes out. I imagine he's a really good TA. He'll probably have it this morning sometime. So I imagine it's probably going to be like maybe a couple hours or something at most. I don't know, but that's my understanding of it. So I can talk you guys right now an overview of it. I can even go through the videos I have and I can collect the data and I can even talk about some of the data with you. But unfortunately, in terms of watching the video as a whole, you will need to wait just a little bit of time. So that means we'll also have more time if you guys have questions about the last lab, and you can just make sure that you have it done really well before you're ready. Once finished with attendance and once you finish with this pre-lab, you guys can go and you can do whatever you want to do. It's fine. And as usual, I'll keep the Zoom up, but it kind of seems to be them gravitating towards using a Discord channel as the post-lab help, just because it's nice to have this selectivity. If someone has a special question, I can talk to them about. I can go over that with them, as opposed to having to go over it with everyone. They're just different philosophies, but I do like that because some students, I imagine, just want silence or something. But if you guys want to go over everything as a class, you can do that too. So just let me know what you want. To talk about this week's lab, basically there are two parts of it. I hope you guys have done the pre-lab already, but if not, at the very beginning of the lab video, I do go over a very brief introduction. I do not cover analysis of the data that you collect in the lab video, because I figured that we would do that as a class during this session. So we can still, well, we can't do that right now, but we can do that once you guys have the video. So there are two parts you guys should be familiar with. The idea, the background goes over the chemical. The background's talking about empirical formulas, chemical formulas. How do you determine them? In this lab, we're actually doing some cool chemistry, just like we did in the last lab. So we're generating two ionic compounds. I guess it makes a lot more sense to see the video before I start talking about this in more detail. But I guess just to prime you, if you haven't already thought about this, just consider that when we're doing this, we have a known value. We begin with, so on part A, we're creating zinc chloride from pure zinc and hydrochloric acid, and in part B, we're creating cupric sulfide from pure copper and pure sulfur, actually. Keep in mind the things which are known in both these cases are the amount of copper and the amount of zinc. And if you know the mass of copper and the mass of zinc, you also know the molecular weight, the molecular weight of both of these things, the atomic mass of them. That way you can determine the moles of each of those. And then you also know the molecular weight of chlorine and of sulfur. And so you can just think about this, right? You can take the extra mass that's added and you can determine the amount, the molecular equivalents of sulfur to copper and chlorine to zinc, respectively. That will probably, again, make a lot more sense once you watch the video. And I will, of course, let you guys know when it's ready.
So is the endpoint to just find the empirical formula for both compounds? Is that what we're doing?
That's the goal.
Okay.
Let's go over the report because I don't want to miss anything. but you have to do some more analysis. So you see on page 59 and page 60, they're also guiding you through this, but you see how at the very end, empirical formula is at the bottom. This has kind of been a consistent trend so far with our reports where like you had to do some math, but usually the end thing in the tables is kind of like the overall goal, and the math to get there is a means to an end. That's still really useful stuff to know. But yeah, so like the objective formally is to get to the empirical formula because we're learning about chemical formulas. Yeah.
Hey, Dylan, I have a quick question about the last lab real quick.
Yeah,
trying to finish my conclusion, but I haven't started it yet because I wasn't sure if you want us to. So my Q test, right, it showed that one of the data points was an outlier, so I tossed that. Does that mean my summary table is going to be based on data with that tossed? Because
yeah.
that's what I'm basing it off on right now. That's why I haven't finished my conclusion yet.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. I was actually just thinking about that same thing. Because we didn't go over Q tests at all. It was mentioned in the first in density. So there are other tests like the Q test that you guys will learn about over time, depending on your track. But they are all tests to determine the significance of a value in a data set, and in particular, how likely is this data point, does it belong to the same series given the statistical, like given the similarities of the other data sets to each other? That's my way of explaining in words the mathematics behind it. It's really simple though. In general, I would say that you don't always, it's not going to be guaranteed there's going to be an outlier in each data set, although I'm not producing the data sets. It's pretty cool actually that like in a normal lab session, you would have like these would actually be our class data. And so it would make a little bit more sense because it wouldn't be like there's this grand design behind things. I think that the last data that we got was probably just was made by Dr. Fuller or by someone else, and that was actually put in there. Looking back at it, it looks quite distinct from the other ones, right? So it's easy to determine. But yeah, I guess to be more clear, when you're looking at your data set, the more data points you have, if you're doing things right and if you're rigorous about it and if your technique was correct, which you should assume it is because you can't be doing the labs, which means unfortunately you just need to assume that you were doing it right. But yeah, so if you look at the data set and you try to spot if something looks like an outlier, and you can prove if it is an outlier or not within a certain level of confidence using the Q test. To answer your question directly, Rowan, yeah, if you find it to be an outlier, then you actually need to go back and you do not consider as part of the data set. You say this value is actually, it's so different, it's so significantly different that it's not describing the same value, the same truth as everything else. Like in this case, they did something wrong in their technique, and so this value is no longer reliable. If you do it, you're going to skew your data towards one direction or the other.
Right.
So it's good to actually analyze these things beforehand. Again, I didn't send you this to you guys before we started, so I'm really glad that Rowan brought this up. But yeah, you have to go back. It's easy in Excel at least, and I'm assuming you guys are doing this in Excel because then you just get rid of one data value and keep the rest of them the same.
Right.
If you're doing it by hand, it's a little bit more annoying. But yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know. This one was pretty obvious because the gap was so huge between the suspected and the one next to it. It was like 9, I think. And then the range was only like 16. Yeah. So there's 12 data points. So you know it should be more specific. I mean, less gap than that. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm basing my conclusion off that. As long as, I guess the way I think of it is I guess as long as I write it down in the conclusion and I have like like my calculation showing my Q test, right, then I should be able to just toss that data, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so should we be doing this for like every lab where we try to find the outlier? If there is one.
If there is one, yeah. Again, I haven't mentioned this because I really haven't been thinking about it. Because it didn't come up. Under normal circumstances, this is much more likely because you guys all have your own data, and then we can see like, I mean, I saw like there's a group doing something and they had a lot of issues, and so when you get their data, it just seems off. Here, I wasn't expecting it because these data are given to us, and I assumed that they were perfect. But it makes sense in retrospect that they were actually given a little bit flawed data so that you guys can actually access, so that you guys can utilize the Q tests and you can learn how to spot if things don't belong or not. I don't know because I'm not making the data sets, but I would presume that going back on what you were saying, Rowan, that outliers are going to be pretty obvious to spot qualitatively just looking at the data. They seem significant, and the Q test is just a way to prove it. In terms of the parlance in your conclusion, you actually use the Q test to justify excluding the data. You could actually exclude the data just by saying it looks different. There's some validity to that. The Q test is a way to quantify the rationale that this data point is statistically different and it doesn't belong in this data set. And by including it in this data set, I'm actually going to be injuring my report. And so while normally getting rid of data sets, like getting rid of data points is, frowned upon, because the more data you have, the more likely it is you're going to get to a true value over the average, because having a greater N decreases it decreases the possibility for you to be artificially skewed one way or the other due to an insufficient number of data points. What am I trying to say about this? So in the conclusion, when you're talking about Q test, you say something like that you justified excluding the data point through the Q test. The Q test told you you proved like your hunch. This didn't really belong. Well, actually, you should finish this thought first. So that's how I would treat this. So as students asking me about this now, if you guys didn't have time to input this into the data, I understand this kind of came up last minute. I think it's nice to still reward students that did find this, because I mean, unfortunately, something I'm learning as a grad student is that there's a lot of self-teaching you need to do, and I'm here to help you guys, but it's especially nice to reward people who are funding these things. And I don't want to make it like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to be fair, basically. I would say for you guys who've already completed it and it's too late to go back and change it, because we're talking about this now, the least you could do though is you could write in the conclusion about this and talk about how this looks like that, but you don't have time or something like that. If you guys give me information, I will work with it, right? And unless you're saying something that's wrong, then it will probably help you. So again, this is something I've learned in grad school, but it's really, really common, unfortunately, to go into an exam, for example, and look at it and like say, like, I don't know anything about this, because you probably don't know anything about it, and I can't do it. But looking through the data and saying, okay, well, I can see this and see this, and if I knew this, I could do this, but I don't know this, that actually shows that you know something, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you guys wrote like in your conclusion that I recognize that this was there, I didn't have time to do it, or I recognize that this was this, but I didn't know how to rectify this, or something like that, that still shows me that you understand something, and I actually will reward that. So keep that in mind. The conclusion is not only like your way of reiterating what you did in your report. Your conclusion is also like your commentary of how you think you did on the report, as in, I'm really confident, here's my way of proving I'm really confident in these results, versus these are the results I've got, but I suspect there could be some problem because of this. You know what I mean? So it's okay, you should talk about that kind of stuff in there. Does that make sense?
Wait, so the Q test isn't, I would say, I guess it's kind of like it would be nice, but then since this was given last minute, so it may not be needed now, but will the Q test be needed in the future? Like, will it be mandatory in the future, or like no?
So the truth is, it should be mandatory now too. I just didn't mention it because I didn't think about it.
Okay.
That's why I would consider just being rigorous. And even though I'm a guide, I'm obviously not foolproof. So be skeptical and look at the data. This is why I'm glad that it came up, because I mean, I just went through it too, and I'm just trying to give you guys guiding information. I'm not doing the same level of analysis that you guys are doing. So I'm happy it came up because now you guys know about this. So if it comes up in the future, you're already prepped. But do consider that basically if something has been introduced in a lab manual, that you are responsible for knowing about that and using it if it were to come up again. So in the very first lab, you guys learned a lot of you guys learned a lot of statistical stuff. Later on, they're not going to teach you about the stats again. They're just going to expect that you used it. It's obvious, of course, when they say do standard deviation, you already know how to do that. The Q test, they're not going to ask you to do because it's one of those things where I don't know if they're actively trying to trick you as much as they're trying to see how well you understand the material. So anyway, I'm glad it came up, because now you guys, now I can help you with this, right? I didn't think about it before.
I see. Okay.
On that same note, there's a question on Discord about the instrumental uncertainty. So I was thinking about that. I don't like having to make you guys work with uncertainty if you don't have to. Just like the Q test, I'm flexible and like, well, you guys didn't know about it, you shouldn't be held responsible for it. At the same time, it was introduced to you, and also I saw this on Discord earlier talking about the uncertainty with the mass in terms of reporting over 100% for the percent recovery on part A of the ammonium chloride. For this lab, I would say don't worry about the uncertainty, but I think in the future I'm going to try to include that, even though it sucks to deal with because it's just a pain. But at the same time, you guys are here to learn, and even though I'm trying to make it easier, I'm doing you guys a disservice by not holding you to that rigor, just like with the Q test, because these are tools you should be able to use later on in chemistry, and they're tools you should be able to use like in physics or other physical sciences. And whether you never use them again, at least you'll have these tools now, and you'll think, well, that's so glad that's over. That sucked. Versus later on, you're going to be expected to know this. You're like, well, I never learned this because I never had to. Like, it's better to be in the first situation. So it's unfortunate because it means you guys have to do more work. I want to reiterate here again that I'm going to try to grade like this, like grade rigorously, meaning try, you guys have this information, you should include it. But the grade you guys get on your reports and the some grade you get in grade book. So like, let's say you got an average on every report of 60%. That doesn't mean you're going to get a D in the class. These physical science courses are just more difficult. And so because the level of rigor is so high, it's not expected that everyone's going to get to a really high grade, which means there's going to be a curving involved. I don't actually give the grades, but what I do is I have these grades that you guys get on your reports. I adjust them over time. So that's why, like, for feedback, like, I really appreciate you guys are talking about the homework. I want you guys to get as good of a grade as possible, right? I'm not trying to penalize you. So talk with me about them and then I'll correct them. That goes too for the reports. When you get the feedback, if you say like, well, this is stupid, I did this, or if I missed something, let me know. And at the end of the lab, I'm gonna do something that is, I will basically just try to normalize the grades. I'm gonna do my own stats on it to try to get a distribution that I think is nice, that is fair to everyone. But I don't give the ultimate grade. I don't have the final say in it. Dr. Fuller does, but I write my proposed grades to Dr. Fuller, and a proposed grade isn't always the same thing as the actual earned grade. So I'm saying this now just to give you guys some reassurance that it's a hard class, but don't be discouraged by that if that means you're losing points, because that's kind of expected. Like if you guys, I think some of you guys are engineers, but I remember as an undergrad, like historically, I mean, I heard that engineers just like you're not an A and B student traditionally as an engineer, because it's just really, really rigorous, and you don't need to be. Anyway, I'm not saying you should not try. I'm just saying that it's expected to be difficult, and that's okay.
Wait, I have a quick question about like the last lab and like the outlier. Is it in the individual results for the whole group? Is it like the 27% of ammonium chloride? Is that what we're talking about?
I need to pull it up so I can see. I don't have it.
Because that's the only outlier in like all of the data sets that I can find.
Does someone have it pulled up right now? Because I don't have it pulled up.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I got.
That's the one I have pointed out as an outlier in my Q test.
Then yes, that one.
Okay.
For the QC, is that just the number of trials?
QC.
No, that's the critical value. So if you have to look at the table. I don't know. So you have to look at the table, depending on how many data points you have, that QC is gonna change. So that should be a constant based on the table. Like for this one, I specifically had to go online and look for the statistical table for Q tests, because the one that we had in the density lab 1, only went up to 10 data points, and we have 12 data points on this one. So once you get that critical value, if it's over, your Q is over the critical value, then that data is an outlier and should be tossed. And if it's under, then it's within the range. So.
Okay, thanks.
Wait, do we have till 12 to correct this, or is it already done?
No, you have till 12.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
It's another reason why I'm glad that we're talking about it, and that I'm asking you guys if you can at least write something in the conclusion, because you still do have time. And writing an addendum on the conclusion it shouldn't take too long. But yeah, like Ron was saying, if you look, this is on page 12 on the lab report. So the QC is something you can calculate. This is not the only time that you'll see a value like this. So similar to QC is actually the 1.96 in the t-test, the confidence interval they're giving you, and as equation 4, also on page 12. They're not showing you the calculation for how to get QC. And in fact, I should probably look it up. But just if you can kind of look at it here, as you get to a higher N, if you increase the number of samples, the QC is decreasing. Basically, what that's telling you is that the acceptance for deviation is smaller as you get higher. If you have a smaller number of samples, it's more difficult to know whether or not the variation you're seeing is natural or not. However, if you increase the sample size, relatively speaking, you're decreasing the likelihood that seeing this outlier is actually representative of the true natural variance, because you have a lot of samples. Let's say you've got a lot of samples like this, is one way over here. If you have 100 samples in here, it's telling you, well, yeah, that one's probably different. If you have 4 samples in this spectrum here, and you have one out here, it may or may not be. You don't really know. There's not enough samples to really know, and so the QC is kind of giving you that number. It's something to compare to. It's a number that gives you it's a value that represents the acceptance, or maybe I should say uncertainty, that the variance you're seeing is possible or plausible or not.
Wait, is the steps how to calculate the QC in the lab manual?
No, it's just given to you. And like Rowan was saying, at this level, I would just expect you guys to look it up, more for higher in values, just look it up. I can, if he doesn't have already, I can just provide you guys something.
Wait, so lab 4 isn't due today, right? It's due next week, right?
It's due next week, yeah.
It's due next week, okay, because I was confused because the way you're talking about it, like the way everyone's talking about it made me confused, and I was like, wait, is it due today? Okay, it's not, okay, good.
Yeah, it's still due in an additional week. So I just got a message from Josh actually that he'll have it by noon, which is inconvenient for us specifically, but it works out for other classes. So what that means is because you guys had less time, still try to have it in by noon next week, just so that we can actually have the time to talk about it in our Zoom session. But if you guys need a little bit longer, I think I'd be more understanding because you didn't have the lab at the same time. It's actually especially important because then, you know, you don't get the same chance to talk about it live with me. So this week I'll just try to work with you more. I would say again, if you guys haven't joined the Discord channel, go there. It's just better. It's better for me and it's better for you guys. You guys get to see the same questions that get asked, and there are questions that get asked there that I don't get in emails too, which is nice. So yeah. Cool. So Rowan just posted I think a larger expanded up to 30 data points. Cool. So you can see here that he is also giving you different confidence intervals of the Q, of the critical Q value. I believe we're using 95, but let me just confirm. I don't think it was specified for us.
Yeah, we're using 95, or
Yeah.
that's what lab was saying.
That's the default to go to too. And that's otherwise specified for most like basic stats, you go to 95. Not just for Q, but for most confidence intervals or most confidence measures.
So we'd be using 0.426 SQC.
Yeah, for this lab, that's what I used to find find out if 27 was an outlier. So
yes, correct. Okay, so so definitely, I took attendance a while ago. So at this point, really, I would just say that you guys are welcome to stay. If you want to talk more about the lab manual, that's great. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine too. Meaning you're free to go. I'll also be on the Discord and I'll be on Zoom, so we can talk on both of those two things. Then after this, I have to tutor for a little bit. And this weekend, I was gonna be in a lab, but I'm gonna take this. I mean, not this weekend. This afternoon, I was gonna be in a lab, but I'm gonna take it off. And I'm gonna first I'm gonna fix the corrections for your homework, and then I'll finish grading your stuff. I'll figure I'll put them onto gradebook and I'll put them in gradebook for you guys. If that doesn't happen, then I'll just email them to you directly so that you guys have something.
Right, so since the video is going to be posted later, we're not going to have a post lab today, right? On like Zoom.
So I'll tell you what, if you guys want to do this, so for anyone who's interested, let's say once the video gets uploaded, I'll just host a separate meeting. It's outside, like it's not that I can't, so I'll do another Zoom meeting, right? Maybe it'd be good to have you guys message me about when it'd be a good time for you, because I want as many students to come as possible. Like I just said, I'm going to take the day off so I can finish this stuff for you guys. So let me know what works for you, because that's something you should have access to, and I don't want you guys to be in a disadvantage for just because the video is late. So let me know. But yeah, I would say yes, but we can't really have it at 11:30 like normal. So let's maybe figure that out. I would say that, let's say it's posted at noon, it would make sense to do it something like, I don't know, 2:30, going by the same format that we usually have. But if that doesn't work for people, if you guys have classes and we can go later in the day, so just let me know. I'll just default it to 2:30 if no one says anything. And then secondarily, I'll be here, like I'll monitor the Discord really rigorously today and make sure that like if you guys have questions, we can talk about it there. I would say in this pre-session before anything gets started, the best I could do is give you helpful guiding information before you watch the lab, because I don't really know what else more I can do at this stage. Does that seem fair to everyone? Well, anyway, let me know. So if there's a time that works for you guys, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll just try to like, maybe I'll just log on back onto Zoom at 2:30, and anyone who comes, we can go over it in more detail, and I can summarize what you guys have, what you need. Probably what I'll do for students who don't come to that is I'll write something. I'll write an email and I'll send it out just as a review that you guys need to have this information, and this is the formatting. Look out for this potential error or something like that if there is one. I mean, I don't know what they are right now, so I just need to look over it to see if I find something like that. But yeah, that's all I can say for now.
All right, thanks, Dylan.